please.
Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Mother Lode, I welcome you to the Tuolumne Utilities District Candidates Forum for Districts 1 and 4. I am Jane Braga, president of our league. At this time, I would like to invite Ms. Debbie Batista, County Elections Officer, to lead us in the flag salute and then share with us some important election voting information.
Hi, if you all rise and we'll say pledge allegiance, and there's our flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you all for coming here and trying to get information on this race and figure out which of the candidates you want to vote for. In this election, there are 14 different local races. So almost everybody will have a couple ballots. On their ballots, will have a couple local races for schools, fire districts, utility districts. So do your homework and vote for the most qualified candidate that matches your beliefs. The ballots are going to be mailed out Monday. So you should start seeing your ballots in the mail Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Remember that every voter gets a ballot. If you do not want to vote by mail ballot, there is going to be lots of opportunities starting Monday morning. You can all line up in my office at 8 o'clock Monday and vote. Starting Monday, from Monday through Friday at the elections office from 8 to 5, you can come in and vote, whether you have your ballot or not. And then starting the 29th, we will start opening up the vote centers, and the first vote center that will be opened up will be Memorial Hall. So for 11 days before the election, Tuolumne Memorial Hall will be open, and you can vote in person. And again, you can vote in person here. And then on the weekends for the 29th and 30th and the 5th and the 6th, you can vote here. And then on the 5th and 6th, you can vote in Groveland's Library, the Community Hall in Jamestown, the Twain Harte Bible Church, Memorial Hall, of course, and what am I forgetting? 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes. No, I think I got them all. Tuolumne, Twain Harte, Jamestown, Groveland. You got them all. And then all of the drop-off boxes will be opened up Monday, and you can start. Even though you don't have your ballots, you could drop off your ballots in the drop-off boxes. The community service people from the sheriff's office pick them up. There's always 2 of them picking them up. So it's really important, if you'll remember a couple of years ago, like 12, the city of Sonora's, their city council who sat on their board, it was only 6 people. So these 6 people could have changed who sat on the board for the city of Sonora. Your vote really does matter in local elections. So do your homework, vote, and get those ballots in early.
We are going to ask folks to refrain from applause, although we appreciate it very much. But just in the interest of fairness and time, actually, also. So thank you, Ms. Batista. We would like to thank Ms. Batista and the Elections Office for their assistance with this forum. We thank the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors for the use of these chambers, and we thank the candidates for their participation. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920. It is 102 years old. The League is a nonpartisan political organization, which means that we do not support candidates or political parties. The work of the League is made possible by member dues, donations, and the dedication of League volunteers. If you are not a member, we encourage you to join. For membership information, visit our website or visit the information table in the foyer. In the foyer, you can also pick up an easy voter guide and voter registration forms. Be sure to pick up a Voter's Edge bookmark. Voter's Edge is the California League's nonpartisan website for information on all ballot measures and candidates in the local, state, and national elections. This forum is being recorded and can be seen on Access Tuolumne County Channel 8 and on our League of Women Voters of the Mother Lode website. I would now like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Ms. Brenda Mchenry. Ms. Mchenry is a resident of Calaveras County, a life member of the League of Women Voters, a past president of the League, and an experienced moderator. Welcome.
Thank you, Jane. Good evening, and thank you all for being here. As Jane said, my name is Brenda Mchenry, and I do not live in the Tuolumne Utilities District. Any of them, for that matter. We have some rules for this forum that I need to remind you about. First, if you would silence your cell phones. And we ask that you not take photos or use electronic equipment or recording. The restrooms, that's an important one, are located just outside the door. And as Jane said, please, no applause or verbal reactions. It just takes time. And our purpose here is to hear what the candidates have to tell us. Following the program, the candidates will most likely be available to where you can meet them down on the second floor where you came in. And here are the rules for the forum. The speaking order has been determined by a coin flip, which we did earlier. All questions are to be posed to all candidates. And we have timekeepers, and they are located here where the candidates and I can see them. They're going to hold up a yellow sign indicating when 30 seconds or less are left, and a red stop sign when the time is up. Each candidate has a 1-minute opening statement. The League of Women Voters Observer Corps has prepared a series of questions with input from community members. The same questions will be asked of all candidates. Our answers are limited to 2 minutes and will alternate among candidates. After the question and answer period, each candidate may give a closing statement of up to 2 minutes in reverse order. And we expect to be ending at 7 o'clock. I will introduce to you now the candidates in alphabetical order. And for District 4, Mr. Alexander Horat, and also Mr. Jeff Kearns. In District 1, Ron Ringen and Brian Shrigley. We have determined that the first candidate with the 1-minute statement will be Mr. Horat.
Oh, well, I really appreciate that, and a big thank you to everyone who's came out tonight. Some of the main points of my campaign are lowering the water rates because they're extremely expensive up here. There's a lot of people on fixed income, and they can hardly survive on their income because everything's going up with inflation. And TUD water rates, they've been going up year after year, and the people have had enough. So I like to actually cut the water rates. That's my plan, and everybody seems to be in support of that by cutting wasteful spending. There's been a lot of wasteful spending that I've been seeing on the TUD board. And another part of my plan also is to protect water rights for people who have wells, because there's been some talk coming out from the state saying how they want to put meters on wells and people shouldn't be charged for their own water. So those are just a few things about me, so thank you.
Thank you. Second is Mr. Kearns.
Good evening. I want to thank the League for having us here tonight. I really do appreciate it, and thank all of you for turning out tonight. My name's Jeff Kearns. I'm a lifelong resident here of Tuolumne County, and I've been in the water business for over 40 years. I've been a water treatment plant operator since 1981. I've been on the TUD board for the last 4 years. We've had a good run the last 4 years, but we've got some unfinished business, and that's the acquisition of the PG&E water rights. PG&E came to TUD, as you know, a few years back, and they offered those water rights to us because they said they're going to divest them and sell them or give them to somebody else. So we need to be that. We need to be that entity that gets those water rights. So that's a little bit about me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Number 3 candidate is Mr. Shrigley.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Brian Shrigley. We've lived, my family's lived in Sonora since early 2000. I'm very passionate. I love Sonora. It's a very quaint town. What we'd like to focus on is I'd like to focus on the water rights, as Mr. Kern had mentioned. That's one thing that I think we need to focus on as a community, and I think we can come together to do that. I think water costs are high as well. I know that a lot of customers have shown an interest in that. So if we could work on that, that would also be beneficial to the community. I would also like to state that controlling expenses is big for me. Employees are important, and retainability of employees is important. So thank you.
Mr. Ringen.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for showing up. Appreciate your interest in this election. And I just want to let you know that I'm a 45-year resident of Tuolumne County, and I've been after TUD for over 15 years, ramped it up big time in 2009, and has by 2011 I have not missed any board meetings or committee meetings, and am involved in numerous water groups and agencies, and one of them is the Tuolumne County Stanislaus Irwimp, and through that group we've been able to bring in close to $30 million of grant monies for this community for projects that could never have been afforded by our ratepayers and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. First question, Mr. Horat, you'll be answering this. It's kind of 2 parts. What would be your top 3 TUD priorities for the coming year, should you get elected, and how would you fund these items?
Well, it basically is my top 3 priorities. I've stated them in my opening, and it's not going to require any funding to lower the water rates because we're going to be cutting wasteful spending. One example of wasteful spending I saw in TUD is they spent $120,000 on a consultant firm for public outreach, but I think the TUD board members, they're supposed to be doing the public outreach and talk to the general public. So I think that was a waste of money. So I think we need to do our best just to lower the water rates, and TUD needs to serve as a safeguard for people's water rights. Those are some extremely important things that I'm seeing that we need, because I heard some talk. There's one major thing that I'd like to change, and that is once you're on TUD water, you can never get off TUD water again. And basically, even if you want to dig a well, for instance, TUD has to come every year and inspect it, and you still have to pay the base rate, $120 every 2 months. So I think that's wrong. I think people should have the ability to get off TUD water if they desire it. If not, it's like controlled monopoly where you can never opt out of paying that money if you don't want their services. So that's a big issue for me, because I saw there was actually a person that I know who had one of their houses condemned, and TUD took the meter off because, they're not supposed to be serving water to people who have houses are condemned. But he still charged $120 every 2 months, and now it's up to $9,000 that he owes to TUD. So I just think that's wrong and needs to be changed. If we have to have a disconnect fee or something, that's something to look into, but people should be able to get off of TUD water if they so desire. So those are kind of some things that I'd really like to push in this year.
Thank you. Mr. Kearns?
Yeah, as I said in my opening statement, number 1 priority is the PG&E acquisition. In my opinion, there is nothing more important, not only for TUD and its ratepayers, but for Tuolumne County than to get these water rights from PG&E, as long as they're still willing to sell them. How are we going to fund that? Well, we're going to have to see, because we never got to that point to where we could sign an agreement with them. As you might have noticed in the grand jury report, we got called out for not being upfront and telling what was going on. Well, we were under a non-disclosure agreement, so we couldn't do that. And that's we were getting to the point there where we could start talking about it, and that was where that consultant came in that Alexander just spoke about, so that we could do a full-blown, very professional program to bring you, the ratepayers, into the fold and tell you exactly why and how we can get those those water rights acquired by TUD. PG&E, as you know, backed out at the last minute there. They have assured us, they sent us a letter here last week that they're going to come back to the table next year, and we feel confident that they will, and we'll get that done. Another thing that is high on my priority list is our capital improvement program. As you may or may not know, TUD has not built hardly any of the infrastructure that we service. We have taken it in from underfunded small utilities over the last 30 years. And because of that, a lot of that stuff is old, it's worn out, and now it's up to us to improve that. Like in Willow Springs, you know, we replaced that pipeline there. It was just full of holes. So that's another big thing. The last thing, and I'm about out of time, but is the Phoenix Lake restoration. We need to get that done. We need to find some grant money and get that project done. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shrigley?
So as I stated it in the beginning as well, this PG&E issue needs to be brought back to the table. And I think Jeff and I think most of us agree with that. Water rights is a huge concern for all of us. And if it's not, then maybe you should look into it further. I think we all should be aware of it. We all should be paying close attention. And the only way to do that is to get PG&E back to the table. And like Jeff stated, I don't know what that would look like. I can't explain how that would be funded. But I think negotiations need to open, and they need to open now. Number two is some low-income families and people on fixed incomes. We need to have a better program to help people that really can't afford escalating rates. I think that should be a big concern for all of us. And I think a way to do that is to facilitate more grants within the government. I'm sure there's plenty of programs out there that we can find that would help people, or at least assist people in finding affordable rates. And another issue that I'd like to address is strengthening the small business connection. We have, we've lost a lot of small businesses, and I think a lot of small businesses and ag businesses rely on our water, and we need to bring them back to the table and say, how can we help? How can we help you build your business? And that should be a focal point for us and for our community. That's pretty much all I got. Thank you.
Next question. What do you, and Mr. Kearns, you'll be the first one to answer.
Ron Reen.
Yeah, I knew it. I'm sorry, Mr. Reagan. It's your turn.
Okay. That's okay. So I think the acquisition of the senior water rights and the PG&E infrastructure is definitely the big thing. But I've heard I don't want to call it a rumor. It came from a very reliable person, but that PG&E, this is good news, by the way, folks, is putting together some sort of new entity that's going to be handling this. So we're very hopeful it will be back at the table really soon negotiating. So that's number one. Number two, the biggie on my list right now, with the way our extremes in weather is and all that, is we are working on putting together fire water drafting points so that if we end, what we don't want here is another paradise, and we are primed for that. So if we have raw water that our firefighters can go to that's dispersed along the 70 plus miles of ditch, they will be able to tackle a fire much sooner. Plus, what will we drink, bathe with, and use for sanitary purposes if they drain the tanks? And if we're worried about the ditch outage in another week or so, and everybody's asked to conserve, then I guess you would guess real quick what would happen if the firefighters were all using fire hydrants. the tanks would be empty. Even if they got the fire out, what are we going to drink? And then the last thing is the Phoenix Lake Restoration Project. We have to get that thing done because it's a water quality issue and also a quantity issue. So it serves the Sonora area, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next question, beginning with Mr. Kearns. What do you think should be done about the aging infrastructure related to our water system?
Well, that's what I was alluding to just a minute ago. As I said before, TUD has built a very small portion of our infrastructure. It's TUD and its predecessor, and actually predecessors, were formed to accept those underfunded, failing systems that have been scattered about the county, and for all the right reasons. But for whatever reason, they came under financial problems, and TUD takes them in. That's one of their charter items. And because of that, we get these systems, and they need a lot of help, just like Willow Springs that I was talking about before. If you've driven down Willow Springs Drive there, you'll remember there that there was just constant leaks there. And finally, we got a project started, and we replaced that whole line quite a distance and ended that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that throughout the county, and that's our capital improvement program. And that's what that rate increase that we did 6 years ago before I was on the board, that raised money just for CIP. And that's something that touches all of us. I don't care where you live in the district. I guarantee you've got some very old, aging infrastructure that your water passes through at some point. And it's something we all need to be aware of, and we all need to pull together to get that fixed, because it's very important. It's very important. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shrigley.
So one of the items that I'm kind of concerned about is the ditch system, and I've heard conflicting stories about the water deliverance and how much of a loss we have. So one of my concerns would be to evaluate that system and find out. I mean, I'm hearing close to 30 or 40% loss we're dealing with. So maybe that needs to be evaluated to cut that percentage down. I mean, I know we're never going to get it down to zero, but if we're losing 40% of our water right off the top, that would be a concern to me. And again, with aging infrastructure, that's one of those items that could be addressed at the same time. If we can get grants to fund that, I think it's important. And I think it also benefits the end user. I mean, if we're losing that large of a percentage off the top, it needs to be evaluated. So that would be one of my first items. Thank you.
And Mr. Ringett?
Would you repeat the question, please?
What do you think should be done about the aging infrastructure related to our water system?
Okay, thank you. First of all, in 1980-82, the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors somehow decided that they were going to buy from PG&E the whole lower system, the 70 miles of ditch, and all of the 14 water treatment plants and everything else. And they did so. They paid PG&E. PG&E is pretty smart, even though they've been a good partner to TUD. They're a for-profit organization. And so for $1 million, Tuolumne County bought all of the stuff that was coming under more and more regulation. And what they got for it was the trying to operate all that, and about $300 million plus in deferred maintenance. And I mean, this was a smart move on PG&E. So what we've been doing is trying to consolidate wherever we can and renovate wherever possible. But this is expensive work and hard to leverage onto the poor ratepayers. So it has to be done at a certain time. We're down to from 14 water treatment plants, we've got it to 11. We're going to take 2 more off. And when that happens, that's where your labor costs go down and all the other costs. We spend $340,000 a year in fuel trying to get our people to and from the various water treatment plants and all the projects that we got going. So this is a biggie. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horak.
Well, we definitely need to keep our infrastructure in working order. There was actually a grand jury report that I read recently talking about how TUD doesn't have very much money for emergencies, like emergencies for the infrastructure and things of that nature. And at the same time, I saw TUD has $21 million in the stock market, which stocks have been going down as of lately. So I think we need to have more cash on hand in case there's a disaster with our infrastructure, so we're very liquid, and maybe use some of that money for our aging infrastructure, because work and stuff like that always costs more a year from now. So if we can use money that we have already, that's definitely something to look into. And as to aging infrastructure, I think the number one thing to do is we can't increase rates for aging infrastructure. There's a lot of things that TUD has been spending money on, such as that consultant firm for the PG&E deal, which never happened, so that was money wasted. So, and also a lot of other things that we've been seeing, wasteful spending. So maybe we could divert some of our spending into aging infrastructure, so our infrastructure is good and so people can continue getting their water. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Right. Our next question, beginning with Mr. Shrigley. What solutions would you propose to address water storage capacity concerns?
You know, that's a difficult one. And for me, I'm learning more about this system every day. And I spent some time today taking a tour with True Care through some different facilities. We toured Lake Tuolumne and some different areas. And for me, to better answer that question, I'd have to understand the system a little bit better. But for storage, I know that we have storage tanks in different areas, and I think we need to assess whether we have to, whether it's gorging out some of the, whether it's Maloney's or whatever, to accommodate more water during heavy flow season. It's a concern to me that, it seems like driving around, I'm sure everybody would agree, all the dams are empty. And it's shocking at first when you drive by and you think, wow, we're really having a hard time. So we need to get together and figure out what the best solution for storage is. I don't have that answer right off the top of my head, but if I understand the system a little bit better, I'm sure we can come up with something. We have a very bright, group. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin.
Yeah, storage has always been one of the top things on my mind, and in all the years I've lived here in Tuolumne County, there's been a couple runs at raising Lyons Reservoir Dam, and they've failed every time. That's a very difficult conversation, because where do you store it? And we're going to have to figure this out, because with our extremes in weather now, we don't get the snowpack that we used to be able to rely on, or at least we have not been recently. And that's one of the major reasons why PG&E is willing to let us acquire the infrastructure and the water rights, because they can't make money doing their hydroelectric. So we need to work on that for sure, but and we're going to have the other big thing is we're going to have to learn how to capture stormwater runoff, because without that, I mean, that's when we get it. And one good example of that is what Twain Harte Community Services District is doing right now. They've got a wonderful project going that was funded through IRWM grant monies that we acquired for them. And it is a fantastic project, and we just need to do more of those sort of things. I'd like to get into detail on what they're doing, but I don't have time. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hort?
Oh, thank you. An important thing to note is that Tuolumne County is one of the richest when it comes to water in the entire state. A lot of our water is going to big cities like San Francisco and others in the Bay Area. So I don't necessarily think we need to spend more money on water storage because that could increase the rates, which people can't really afford the rates right now. What I think is what we need to do is protect the water storage that we already have. We shouldn't be diverting the water to big cities because we need to be worried about people in this county first before others who don't live in the area. So that's some of my thoughts when it comes to water storage. We have the whole Pinecrest Reservoir. There's been some talk of a PG&E deal to buy the water rights, and I would be in support of that if, depending on how the contract is. But number one is I would not want to raise rates to do that. I don't think we would have to raise rates if we spent our money wisely, because if we increase rates, that's going to put more trouble on a lot of people who can barely afford TUD water at the moment. And there's been a lot of people I've been talking to who can barely afford it, and they could lose their house, and there's been people who've lost their house. So we can't allow that to happen. We need to be protecting our people here in Tuolumne County. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Mr. Kearns?
Yeah, water storage, that's the age-old question, isn't it? How many times have we read about raising lands and increasing our storage? As strictly as a water purveyor, I would love to see lands raised and store more water. However, being a lifelong resident here, I understand the environmental and the historical concerns as well. So I'm kind of torn on that. But in reality, is it really going to happen right now? Probably not. I think the best thing for water storage is getting our hands on those PG&E water rights that they want to negotiate with us. And here's why. Because right now, PG&E runs Pinecrest, Lyons, and Phoenix as power generation reservoirs. We can run those things, or TUD can run those reservoirs as a water supply first reservoirs. And that right there, I believe, and I know staff does too, is that we can make quite a bit more water available for our ratepayers in Tuolumne County just by simply having control of those reservoirs. We have to sell some to PG&E for power generation along the way. Of course we will, but we will be looking at it with a mindset of water use first for our ratepayers and our customers, and that's a big difference. That's a big difference when you think about it. So that's mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, and beginning with Mr. Ringen. How would you keep customer rates reasonable while meeting increasing operational needs?
Well, that's a real tough question to answer. I think we're doing a really good job as best we can right now, and it's being done through consolidation of infrastructure, and it's being done through well-planned projects like Mr. Kearns brought up, the Willow Springs pipeline replacement, where we used to send out crews to fix one leak right after the other. Many times during the year, I've been out personally watching a repair behind Bank of America quite a number of years ago from beginning to end. And when they found the pipe, a cast iron type pipe, it had like 4 bands on it within 4 feet. Now that's a total waste of money. And so the more that we can consolidate and make these major replacements, that's gonna keep the ratepayers' amounts down, what they have to pay. And once we get it down to, I think we're planning on having 3 main water treatment plants in the near future, Sierra Pines is the next one up. Everything will be gravity, or pretty much will all be gravity. Do you know how much that saves? So most other water utilities don't have that option. Gravity is huge. No electricity, or very little. Thank you.
And Mr. Horace.
When it comes to water rates, I believe the water rates up here are unreasonable. I think they're too much money. I've talked to quite a few people who moved up here from the Bay Area, and they say that their water bills were significantly lower than they are here, and they're getting our water, a lot of these areas, so I find that pretty ridiculous. And I also believe there's been some talk about TUD consolidating, gobbling up smaller water companies, and I think that's generally a bad thing because I was talking to some people, some of my possible constituents on Hillsdale Drive, and they said they had their own local water company, a few wells, and they were only paying like $30 every 2 months. And then they said once TUD, it was basically a forced sale, they had to consolidate with TUD, then they're paying like $300 every 2 months. So I think consolidation is generally bad in a lot of cases, especially in that case. We saw those people, they're paying a lot of money now to TUD for the same water. They take over these well systems, because this water came from, I think, 6 wells, they said, and TUD got control of the wells, so it's not like they're bringing water from somewhere else, but costs way more with TUD. So it's just an important thing to know. Kind of some of my thoughts on consolidation, and we need to lower the water rates because they're too high for people.
Mr. Kearns.
Well, first thing, TUD does not search out small water companies to acquire. The small water companies approach TUD to be acquired. That's how that works. Second of all, there's 3 things that affect our cost, and these are the big ones: regulation, regulation, and regulation. I'll tell you, I want to see the regulation that it causes our rates to go down, because every time these regulations come out of Sacramento, it's a new parameter that we have to apply to, or we have to conform to. It's more chemicals we have to use. 30 years ago, we were removing things down to 1 part per million. Then along came about 2000, the year 2000. Now we have to remove things down to 1 part per billion. And now there's talking about even removing contaminants down to 1 part per trillion. Now I can tell you, whenever we get regulations like that, it always costs us more money. We have to buy new equipment, we have to buy chemicals, we have to train our people, and it's very expensive. So if we want to keep our rates down and lower, maybe even possibly lower our rates, we need to start in Sacramento. And every time you see on the ballot, for instance, when you see these Safe Water Drinking Bond Acts and these safe water items that come on your ballot, when those pass, because they always do, it always comes with another layer of regulation, and it's more cost to you as the ratepayer, and myself included on that. So, like I said, regulation, regulation, regulation. Now, comparing us to the Bay Area for water rates is apples and oranges. If you look at our map, we have a huge footprint that we have to serve people all over this county. And the Bay Area is a much smaller, condensed. They have a smaller area of infrastructure and more people to spread that cost over. So you can't compare one system with another. Anyway, I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Strigling?
So let's face it, last year, CPI index went up 8.2%. That's hitting people pretty hard. Gas prices are through the roof. That gets passed on to companies as well. So for us, we still have to absorb that, right? One of the things that I think that we need to focus on, or that we could do better on it at TUD, is project management. I, for one, drive over the Phoenix Lake area every single day to and from work. And guess what? We've got a project that's been going on there for 2 months. They tore up the road, repaved it, then tore it up again, and repaved it. Why? So for us, if we had more effective project management, at the site level, I think we could probably be a little bit better and end up saving money for the end customer. That's my take on it. So I think we need to focus a little bit more time and energy on operations. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Next question. Beginning once again with Mr. Horan. What can you tell us about water rights in Tuolumne County?
Well, I think water rights are an integral part of people's property rights. People own to the center of the earth the water rights when they own a piece of property. And there's been a lot of shenanigans coming out with the state government talking about putting meters on wells. And the person who would most likely be enforcing that in Tuolumne County would be TUD, because, of course, it's great for TUD because they get to put a meter on your well, so they are getting more money for their company, but it goes against integral property rights of property ownership. So as a TUD board member, I'd like to protect those water rights. I would not like to enforce that because that's just wrong. It goes against the Constitution. It really goes against all our unalienable rights, in my opinion. So that's something I'd like to stop, and I've been hearing some shenanigans of, putting meters in wells and other things. And also, that's pretty much my thoughts on water rights. We need to protect them for people in this county. We don't want people in another county owning our water rights, for instance, or a foreign entity also. So it's also important to keep things local, things under local control, because TUD encompasses all the local areas. So those are some of my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Mr. Trigley?
Water rights, water rights, water rights. We've heard that. I think we all pretty much share the same opinion, and I think most people in this room share that opinion. I think it's important. It's important for future generations for us to get this PG&E back to the table and figure out exactly what's going on and how we can procure that. What that looks like, or how that process happens, it needs to be done swiftly. And I think that it's something that I think more people, as they understand it, right? Water's important. We need water, right? I mean, that's we're not going to get away from that. And I think that needs to be a focus. And I think that most people in this room would agree with that. Yeah.
Mr. Ringen?
So would you mind repeating that question, please?
What can you tell us about water rights in Tuolumne County?
Okay. Actually, I can tell you a fair amount. First of all, we don't have any, TUD does not have any viable water rights. We have some that are in the lower elevation that have no water when we need it. We need water in summer and in fall. So that's why the PG&E acquisition is so important to our board and our TUD organization, because if we got the senior water rights, the most senior water rights on the South Fork Stanislaus River, we will always be first in line. And it's not necessarily going to benefit just TUD ratepayers. This is going to be the entire county. This is going to be good for all the businesses, the hospital, and everything else. This is going to guarantee that your children and your children's children will always have water, because we will be first in line. So that's what I can tell you about, briefly, about our water rights situation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, beginning with Mr. What have I done now?
You skip me. You skip me.
Okay. Did I miss you?
Yes, you did. That's okay. Can I go?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
Just want to clear up one thing on the wells. Metering wells is coming down from the state of California. That is not a TUD issue. And when and if the state does meter, and they probably will, when they meter wells, if there is any charge for that, that money will go to the state. It will not come to TUD, because that's the state's power grab on that. As far as water rights go, there's an old saying when it comes to water rights: first in time, first in right. And unfortunately for us as citizens of Tuolumne County, the city and county of San Francisco, the city of Modesto, the city of Turlock, and the South San Joaquin Irrigation District filed on just about all of the water, and PG&E, by the way, filed on just about all of the water, virtually all of the water that comes out of Tuolumne County that originates way back when, long before any of us here were ever born. And so that's why we don't have any water rights today. And remember that, it's important. First in time, first in right. So the oldest, most senior water rights are the ones that take priority all over all the others that come behind it. And the PG&E water rights that we've been talking about here tonight are the senior of the senior. They are the most senior water rights on the Stanislaus River. So that's why it is so important that we get those under local control. Because if we're unsuccessful, and this goes back to what Alexander said about that consultant that we spent the money on. We have to get the community behind us here. The community has to know how important this is, because it really is important to the future of this county for our kids and our grandkids. And so that's what I know about water rights. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question, and Mr. Kearns, I'm going to let you start.
Okay.
What do you see as the impact on TUD of decreasing water levels throughout the county?
You mean as an aspect to wells? I guess is what that means. That's what I'll take that as.
Decreasing water levels.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a real problem. A lot of us do have wells. And when wells go dry, some of you maybe in this room have had that happen. And then what do? Would you get a well driller out there to go deeper? Maybe. And you might get water and you might not. Maybe you have to call up TUD. And if we're close, if we have infrastructure close by, it might be a reasonable cost to hook up. If we're a long ways away, or some other water company is a long ways away, now you've got a real problem. And that's exactly it. I think that with wells going dry, and I've like I said, I've been in this business a long time. I have never seen wells go dry like they are right now. And it's concerning. I have a well for our little water company up at Cold Springs. We also have a surface water right there too. But we're very concerned about our well. It has been a very good well for a long time. But I watch those pumping levels as we pump it, and they drop down to lower than I've ever seen them before. And it's how do you recharge a well? I mean, you got to have a good winter, right? Nothing we can do about that. So we have to be successful in getting these PG&E water rights so that we can control those reservoirs like I spoke about earlier and run them in a manner that it's drinking water first, hydropower second. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shrigley?
So we're talking again about water rights. Water rights is important. Why is that? Do we control the flow of water coming from any of these areas? No, we don't. PG&E does. PG&E mandates where they want it to go, essentially, right? Or if we're not careful, it could end up being the actual state of California mandating where that water goes. So that's why the water rights are important. That's why we need to wake up and pay attention to what's going on. And I think that if we get a strong board, hopefully we can bring PG&E back to the table and get that negotiated out. I agree with Jeff. I mean, it's important, and I think we need to pay attention to it. But the bottom line is it's out of our control at this time, right? We don't control the flow of it, but we need to, and that would be the first order of business as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin.
So, my take on the lowering of the water levels here in Tuolumne County is that this is a all-inclusive issue. It can't just be done by one entity or another. Back in the first go-around drought, 2014-15, many people out in Stent area ran out of water. And through cooperation between the county and TUD and the funding source, there was that Stent was piped with treated water, and that was a phenomenal situation. And right now, the Tuolumne Stanislaus Irwimp is working on a program for well well water testing and possible. We've got a grant that we've got in the crosshairs that to try and get out and find people that have failing wells and be able to help them. Now, we're not to home base yet, but we do know that the DWR has already promised us this grant to do it, and we're trying to figure out the most cost-effective way to do it. But like I said, this is an all-inclusive, everybody in order to solve this problem. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have wells that are going to go dry or come up with contaminants that they're not going to be able to use that water. So we need to get out in front of it best we can, and it's going to take cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hora?
So in regards to lowering water levels, there's really nothing that TUD can do in a large sense because TUD cannot control the weather. Wells have been going dry for centuries, and then sometimes there's more rain, and then the wells have water again. So there's really just nothing TUD can do in regards to controlling the weather, unfortunately. So we're not going to see much we can do to stop lowering water levels when they do lower, unfortunately. And in regards to the whole PG&E deal, I think it would be good that we have direct control over those water. We do have an agreement right now pretty much where we're getting water for free as of now. That's the way things have been going. But I just wanted to say one more quick thing about that consultant firm because there were some issues raised. That was $120,000 they spent on a consultant firm for public outreach about the PG&E deal, which never happened. It never happened. And the TUD board members, they weren't making like videos. They weren't talking to their constituents. They weren't talking to the people about this deal. When it was TUD board members, it was their job to tell the public about this PG&E deal. It wasn't them, oh, we're just going to hire some consulting firm, which apparently wasn't very good because the grand jury report said that there wasn't very much said about the whole water rights buying. So it's just some things we have to look into. We need to make sure our costs are low so we can provide a good service to the people at a very low rate. And I think we need to lower water rates for that to happen.
Thank you. Okay. Our next question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Strigley. How do you view climate warming in regards to TUD?
Well, I mean, we're not going to get away from it, right? So for me, we have lots of resources up here, and I think we have a beautiful area. I think we have, if we keep, all of our dams and so forth full, we have, full capacity to go out and enjoy our lifestyles. However, there's other things like greenhouse gas emissions. We can go on all day about different types of things like that. If you're asking for what my stance is on what I think the climate action plan is doing, or what I think climate change is happening with evaporative factors with our water system, for us, we have to be smart. We have to put together committees or whatever we need to do to get input from the community. And what do we need? What do we need to do with government? We need to work with local officials if we need to. Whatever we need to do, we need to work together as a team. And it seems like the current board that's in place may not always work as smartly together. And I think we can do better. That's my take on it. I think if we get more government agencies involved, I think we can help out and see what we can do with working with small businesses and working with different parts of the community. That's my take on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Rankin?
So on the subject of climate warming and that sort of thing, it's pretty much a reality at this point, unfortunately. The weather is nothing close to the way it was when I was growing up. And so it takes, what we're doing right now is trying to work with the change. We can't make it change, so we've got to change. And we're trying to find ways to know when to hold the water where, and then we got to worry about atmospheric rivers, which would overflow the dams if we were holding back too much water. So it's like a two-edged sword, and we need to, that's what we're doing right now, is trying to figure out the best way to negotiate our way through this changing climate situation, because it goes from one extreme to the other, and it's almost unpredictable, as you've seen, especially in the past couple of years, where, I don't know, last October it rained like I've never seen it rain, and then was dry for a month, and then we got hammered with more snow than I've seen in forever, and then we went into a 3-month drought in the middle of winter. So this is just going to take good planning, and once again, everybody working together in order to try and come up with the proper solutions. Thank you.
Mr. Hoare.
Well, I just would like to say an unfortunate fact is that we cannot negotiate with the weather. It's not a human being. We can't talk to it. If the weather's going to be changing, if how the Earth is, getting closer to the sun, or how everything is going, we can't. TUD doesn't really have the budget. We don't have the money to really change that. Unfortunately, we just don't have that type of money. And when I'm hearing talks about planning for things like this, we're seeing a lot of state shenanigans, and we see a lot of things going on at the local county level. Mr. Shrigley talked a little bit about the Tuolumne County Climate Action Plan, and I have I'm very opposed to that, because that seeks to stop greenhouse emissions by reducing cattle herds because they fart, which is a very natural process. A lot of people fart. Do you want to get rid of people too, because that's going to have an effect on the climate? Or banning wood stoves because they produce emissions in Tuolumne County? That's very concerning for me, because we have a wood stove. A lot of people in this county do. And we have a group that's been fighting this because people should be able to heat their homes. We see what the failed climate policies are doing in Europe right now. It's heading into dark winter. People can't heat their houses. People freeze to death when they can't heat their houses. So it's a huge issue, these state shenanigans, and I think we actually can. There's something called the nullification movement, which I am very for, and it has actually been done in the state of Missouri and counties in Missouri. So I think we could actually use nullification for a lot of state shenanigans, in my opinion, just by non-enforcement of certain things the state wants to do, such as meters on wells. It's very concerning, because TUD would probably be enforcing that. Oh, someone call TUD, you have to put a meter on this guy's well. No, that's no to that.
Thank you. Mr. Kearns.
Climate change, wow. We could talk all night on that, I guess, probably, huh? Yeah. It, it really doesn't matter as far as how TUD has to react to it, what causes it. It's obviously been warmer the last several years, so we have to react to it. We have to figure out a way to either increase our storage, build more water tanks, raise reservoirs, put everything on the table. But at some point in time, we've got to make sure that we have enough water for everybody here to use throughout the year. Fill and spill. I mean, you hear that term a lot around TUD. We want our reservoirs to fill and spill. If we fill and spill, we feel very confident we'll get through Labor Day, and when the use goes down, and we're in good shape. So when we don't fill and spill, that's when we have troubles. Luckily, the last few years, as hot as it's been, as dry as it's been, our reservoirs have filled and spilled. So we've been okay. But that's going to be an ongoing thing that you hear about for a long time, I'm sure. And to try to tell you, sitting here right now, what TUD is going to do, boy, that's a conversation that could go on a long time. Thank you.
Okay. This is going to be our last question. I probably shouldn't even ask it, but because we want to give you time to give a closing statement. However, maybe we can just only take 1 minute for these. this. And beginning with Mr. Ringen, how would you work with fellow board members to reach consensus on important issues?
Well, I work overtime on that, and consensus is always what we are striving for. Unfortunately, when you put 5 different people with different viewpoints and so on, you're not going to get agreement all the time. So I would say that the very best answer I could give you for that would be that you need to be respectful. You need to be open to other ideas and just try to work together. I mean, that's the best you can do.
Thank you. Mr. Warwick.
Well, with working with fellow board members, I think it's a good idea to talk to them. I believe open government is very important because it seems like a lot of things in government are decided when the public can't see what's being talked about and the reasons why a certain board member wants to do something. So I think it's very good to have conversations publicly so people can hear what's going on. And just working nicely with board members, trying to come up with a good way to actually help the people under TUD to have lower water rates to basically so they have disposable income to live is my biggest goal.
Thank you. Mr. Kearns.
Yeah. Well, I've been on the board 4 years, and we've had a few tussles. We've had a few tussles over those 4 years, but at the end of the day, and this is going to sound like such a cliche, and I'm going to say it anyway, but it's true. I mean, you got to find some common ground. You got to find common ground with your board members, your fellow board members. You got to figure out what the base is. I mean, what are we really here for? We're here to supply water. We're here to help staff come up with the best ways to supply the best possible water at the cheapest possible price. I mean, once everybody comes to terms with that, I believe, the rest is just negotiation. And, it's I'm sure all of you have been there, served on boards. Family politics, the same thing. I mean, you just find that common ground and you build from there. And you do it in a respectful way, like Ron said. And hopefully you get to a consensus that works out for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strictly.
So I agree with people having their opinions on things and so forth, and I think a big portion of why we could be successful is maybe sitting down and sharing each other's viewpoints. This is why my stance is on this, and this is what my stance is on that. I think that a lot of people, if you come in with an open mind, you can sit and actually, if you understand the root problem or the reason why the person is digging in regarding a certain specific topic, I think we can come to an agreement. I think if we're logical and I think if we're smart about it, I think most of us are intelligent people and we can come to an agreement as to why we think it's the best thing for the community, or if we don't agree on it, then we don't agree on it. But the mutual respect, I think, is a huge factor. We may not always agree. We may disagree at times, and you need to respect the other person. So, yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You each have a 1-minute closing statement available, and we'll begin with Mr. Ringen.
Okay, thank you. I guess what I want to say is that with all the years that I've been involved with TUD, I've put together several binders just full of pictures, and I've toured all of the infrastructure, met the employees, and I understand how it works. I would ask anybody that has any questions, please get a hold of me. I'd be happy to answer them. I've got the proof. I've got the documents. I've worked on this. I've spent so much time out of my life trying to make sure that I understood TUD and all of the issues as well as all the good points. So if anybody has any questions whatsoever, please get a hold of me. I'd be happy to discuss it with you. I've got the proof. I can show it to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strigley.
So I guess one of my biggest concerns would be our community, right? We all want to We want to know that we've procured our water rights. We want to know that we have fair rates. We want to know that we have a board that's actually looking out for our better interest. And I think that that's important on many levels. It's important to the organization. It's important to the community. And I think with my stance on it, operational experience, I think I've had 27 years of operational management experience. I've managed large apartment buildings. I'm the operations manager right now out at Lake Tulloch, well, actually for Poker Flat. We're dealing with CCWD and PG&E and melding those two entities with several projects we're doing. I think that I would add a lot of value to the organization, and I think that we have the ability to maybe work together and come up with a pretty good team. So,
Thank you. Mr. Kearns.
Thank you. Well, if you take one thing away from me tonight, I hope you take my passion for the water business, because I really am passionate about it. I let my emotions get up on me a little bit there when we talk about water rights and the state handing down regulations and kind of overreaching with the water well meters and whatnot. But that's because I'm passionate about it, and it's important to me. It's been important to me for a long time, and when I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, those are the kinds of things I think about. And, I just keep going back to it, and you're probably sick of hearing it, but these water rights are just so important, and that's what I am most passionate about, because it's the future of our county. It doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter if you're retired. It doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 100 years old. There is nothing more important for Tuolumne County than water. I'm out of time already. Wow, sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Horace.
Well, just as my closing statement, I think I carry a new perspective for if I'm elected to the TUD board compared to the other board members. My core values are basically smaller government is better government, because my mom's from Venezuela and we saw what happened there. The only people there who have money now are people who work for the government and are very, very closely associated with the government. And everyone else is eating their cats and dogs. And it's a really horrendous thing that's going on in that country, and I don't want that to happen here. I think we're on a dangerous road with TUD, with making the water rates higher each year by year, growing the size of government, consolidating government, gobbling up these little water companies, which are competition to TUD. So if you vote for me, I'm just going to do the best I can for the people. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. I apologize for breaking off not giving you your 2 minutes, but to close. But we're always very conscious of time. So thank you very much, and thank you.
yeah.
Well, this concludes our Tuolumne Utilities District Forum, and I'd like to thank all of our volunteers who made this evening possible. Thanks to all of you for attending, and don't forget on your way out, thanks also to our candidates, and don't forget on your way out, pick up an easy voter guide and a Voter's Edge bookmark, and most important, don't forget to vote. Your vote is your voice. Thank you.